Welcome back, Mindsetters. I hope you had a nice little break. And now we've got something very special happening. We actually have a caller on the line. Her name is Mashudu, and she's calling to actually speak to us here live on studio. So, Mindsetters, make sure you also get that number down so you can also call us and come in live. So, is Mashudu there? Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Mashudu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, can you see me waving? Saying hi.
Hi.
Okay, so right now I'm going to pass you over to Aslam. Aslam, take it away. Let her know what you want to ask.
Thanks. Hi, you Mashudu.
Hi, I'm good and you?
Good. I'll also wave. Wave with both my hands for you. You got that? Okay. I'm spreading the love. My 67 minutes. Shoot with your question, Mashudu.
Oh, so I wanted to ask, what's the difference between asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction?
Good, Mashudu. That's a good question. Mashudu wants to know, Tai, what's the difference between sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction? Aish. It's a tough one, Mashudu. What can I say? Asexual reproduction, no fun. Sexual reproduction, fun. No, that's not the answer. Don't think that's the answer, Mashudu. Don't ever repeat that anywhere else, eh? Okay, let's look at it. So let's start with the words I explained earlier. Asexual reproduction and sexual. Literally, what I said is correct in that sexual reproduction, there is sex in it. The word has it. And asexual, without sex, basically. Literally, just to understand where we're coming from. But more importantly than that, we need to explain it in words. Sexual reproduction involves the exchange of gametes. Mashudu, you with me?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay, now you fill in the blanks for asexual. If sexual involves the exchange of gametes and asexual, Mashudu?
Oh,
If sexual involves the exchange,
no change of gametes.
exactly, there will be, it will not involve.
Change of gametes.
Great, great, you with me, I like that, I like it. I'm not going to give you all the answers, you've got to help me. Okay? Now,
Yes,
what I've got for you is a nice little table to discuss this. And let's go to the more obvious differences as well. That is the crux of what we had to discuss, the first part. One involves the exchange and one doesn't. But more than that, obviously, for asexual reproduction, Mashudu, we have one parent.
One parent.
And for sexual, we have two parents, obviously. And for asexual reproduction, obviously, if there's only one parent, we do not need sex cells, nor do we need sex organs anyway. But because we're talking of reproduction, there are no sex cells involved here. And in sexual, sex cells will be important, will be necessary. Here, in asexual reproduction, what does this mean? Can you tell me, Mashuda? I'm not going to explain that. Tell me, where we're saying 46, 46, and 23 plus 23 gives us 46. What are we saying here? What are we talking about when we're talking of this special number 46?
Number of chromosomes.
Great, Mashudu, you with me. I love that. You have 46 chromosomes. And what does this one tell you then? 46 to 46. What does that mean?
It's diploid.
Sorry? Diploid. And obviously, it does not change. In asexual reproduction, the chromosome number.
Oh, it stays constant.
Good, great. It stays constant. Great. I'm loving this with you there. Okay, I'm spreading the love. Try 67 minutes of it. And in sexual reproduction, the chromosome number stays the same, but it involves two haploid gametes coming together to give us the 46. Here, the entire organism was 46, for example. 46 wasn't a good number here, but you know what I'm trying to say there, because 46 is always associated with which species, by the way, Mashudu? Mashudu?
Yes, sir.
46?
Human species.
Good, with human species. So it's not a very good example to have that, because we do not have asexual reproduction. You can't get another Khan coming here, and you can't get another Mashudu. Yes?
And Hydra.
Yes, good. All right? Some organisms will also have that same chromosome, but for us, mainly, when you talk 46, we only talk about humans as such. Right? Doesn't mean that there are other organisms that won't have 46. Please understand that. But for us, because we're so used to it, that's why the problem comes there. But you understand what I'm saying here. The chromosome number, there's no need for halving the chromosome number. Also, obviously, if it came from one parent, then this organism must look the same, identical in all aspects, almost like an identical twin. So it will be identical to the parent. Why? Because there's no mixing of sex cells and no crossing over. Here the cells are different. By the way, Mashuru, apart from the mixing of sex cells, what else causes cells to be different from the original parent?
Meiosis.
Great, meiosis, good. I'm hoping all you other kids are listening to what Mashuru is saying, guys, because these are important questions that can be asked in an examination. And the last one, it begins by cell division, and that is mitosis, and sexual reproduction actually starts by fertilization when the gametes fuse with each other. That is what we will call, you and I, conception. When were you conceived? The day the sperm fused with the egg. Mashuru, did we help you with your answer?
Thank you, sir. We did.
Great chatting to you, Mashuru. We will then go back to Tai for 2 seconds.
All right, Mashuru, I hope you had a nice little chat there, and thank you for calling us. That's the first thing I want to say. I hope you're enjoying the show. You are? Okay, well, Mashuru had hung up before I could get to speak to her. But anyway, as long as you got the question answered, I hope you had fun. And on that point, Aslam, I think we've got a couple of questions here. Just want to get them in before we continue.
Great,
Basically, Colleen wanted to find out which generation of Sporophyte or Gamophyte is semi-parasitic to the other and why.
Okay, the question is good. I'm going to repeat that. Colin, eh?
Yes.
Colin wants to know which generation, sporophyte or gametophyte, is semi-parasitic on which one. By the way, just to put all of us in the right frame of mind, this question is related to the life cycle of the moss plant. They want to know which of the two, the gametophyte or the sporophyte. Remember, we spoke about this earlier, the life cycle. The sporophyte is the diploid one, and the gametophyte is the haploid one. He wants to know which of these two generations is semi-parasitic on which one. Now, first of all, guys, we need to understand this, and let's explain this word parasitic because you're going to come across it when you're going to do the social environmental studies later in the year. So, parasitic means when one organism lives off another one, causing harm to that organism. Now imagine this. These are two of the same plant. The same plant. One is a sporophyte generation, the other one is a gametophyte generation. But they want to know which one is semi-parasitic. The one that is semi-parasitic is the sporophyte generation because it lacks chlorophyll to manufacture its own food initially, or rather later, and more than that, it needs water and nutrients from the gametophyte. Remember that diagram. We had those little leafy structures at the bottom. That was the gametophyte. And from this gametophyte generation, we saw a little stalk going there, and it looked something like that. This is the sporophyte generation. Notice the foot is inside the gametophyte generation. And because of that, it requires water and other nutrients from this gametophyte, and therefore it is sort of stealing from that particular gametophyte generation. That's why it is considered to be semi-parasitic to the gametophyte. Other questions, Tai?
We did have one more. Let me see if I can find it, scanning through my page. And yes, we had one from Tuso, which is kind of similar on the same point. Does the sporophyte die once it has produced and released its spores?
Yes, Tuso, eh?
Tuso, yes.
It would wither because it becomes dry. What happens is the capsule, let's go extend the page a little bit, just to go there. Remember, this is the capsule. Inside are the spores. This capsule will burst to release the spores. And therefore, that sporophyte generation has served its purpose, and reproduction will continue, and in that way, the organisms will carry on flourishing.
And I think that's about it.
Okay, great. Let's move on with our question then. The first question we have is adapted from last year's paper, 2011, question 1.5 from paper 2, because remember, this is where reproduction is done. The question says, study the diagrams of the structures of two flowers below. The magnification of each flower is indicated in brackets. Guys, I'm hoping that while I'm going through questions, you're noticing what I'm doing. I'm always underlining the keywords. This is what you need to do. Make sure that you underline the keywords as you're going along, because the keywords will guide you in what you need to do later. So they've given you two diagrams, two lovely diagrams there. Flower A, magnification multiplied by 20, and flower B multiplied by 0.5. So already you can see there's a difference in the magnification between the two flowers. They want to know, firstly, labels for C, D, and E. I always do the labels on the diagram. Label C is on the outside of the flower. That obviously, guys, would be the petal. Or if you're talking of the whole whorl, the whorl meaning one whorl, the outer whorl, then this would be the corolla. So it's either you can say petal or corolla. Both are correct. That's C. D, the structure here, remember we had this in a life cycle, filament and anther. And the last one is E. This is this one here. Look where it's leading to, down there, down to the ovary. So this would be the receptacle, or rather, I almost wrote the same thing that I was thinking. It is the stigma. Notice, you may have this idea that the stigma is always something that looks like that on the top there. That's a stage. This one is different. It has multiple, because of certain reasons. This particular flower has multiple stigmas. A nice question they could have actually asked you here as well. I'll ask it just now. Right, that was the first question. The second one says, which flower, A or B, is probably pollinated by insects? So which one is pollinated by insects? If you look at the two, you can see there, and you would choose, obviously, flower B. Let's see. They didn't ask you the reason. Let's ask that question now. Why do you think that this particular flower is pollinated by insects? Look at the stigma in this flower here. Stigma is lower down. Look at this stigma here. It's almost out, exposed. Now, a flower that is exposing the stigma like this will not necessarily need an insect to come and do the job. The wind can pollinate that. Whereas a flower that's closed like this would need the insect to come down to get the nectar. So while it comes down deep to get the nectar, by the way, it can either take away pollen grains from there, or it can leave pollen grains on the stigma there. And that pollen grain will then germinate and move on with it there. I was asking you this question, let's ask it now. Look at this. What's the need for a flower like this to have so many branches of the stigma? Obvious, I led on earlier, because it's a wind, probably a wind-pollinated flower. Obviously, the more stigmas that it has, the greater the surface area of the stigma, the more the chances of pollen grains landing on that stigma. Okay. The last question here this was a nice question, but last year many learners failed to answer this correctly. They want to know which flower's actual size is greater. Actual size. In other words, we are telling you in the instructions that there's magnification. That means this is not the actual size of the flower, but it has been magnified for us to see. Now, this particular flower was only magnified 0.5 times, and this one was magnified 20 times. But if you look at the two diagrams, the size of the two flowers are very similar. So obviously, the one that is at a lower magnification, 0.5, in actual terms is the bigger of the two. So your answer there would be flower B. And that's how you get your marks in that section. I'm hoping we're together, guys. Ty, just shout if you get a question.
No problem, will do. I'm scanning the page right now.
Okay, this one here was adapted from the Sunday Times exemplar of 2011, last year's Sunday Times exemplar. The flow diagram below illustrates the general plan of alternation of generations. The letter represents structures and the numbers represent processes. Very clear instruction given by the person that said this particular paper. They're talking about that the letters are representing structures. So you know already when they ask you for C or B or whatever, then you're talking of a structure. And when you're talking about numbers, then you are talking about processes that are taking place there. Very important. You must know the difference when you're asked also in the question paper. So they've given us a nice diagram there. The first question is, explain what is meant by the term alternation of generations. Now, we spoke about this earlier when we did the life cycle. Obviously, it means that a sporophyte diploid generation alternates with a haploid gametophyte generation. In simple terms, guys, this simply means that there are two generations in the life cycle of this organism, and these are the gametophyte generation, which is haploid, and the sporophyte generation, which is diploid. Identify the generations represented by the letters A and B, respectively. Now, remember when they use this word respectively, even if you do not put A or B, if you put it in the right order, then you would get the answer correct. But try to avoid that. Always, if they say A and B, then write down in your answer book A and B, and next to each the answer. So they want to know the two generations. This is A, and notice what's coming from A. Gametes. And here we have the zygote that's giving there. And the clue, those were the two clues. You know that gametes are haploid. And you know that the zygote is diploid. And therefore, A would be the gametophyte generation. And B is the sporophyte generation. This is the way they would ask any life cycle diagram, guys, or they can ask you to explain the life cycle of a particular organism. So I'm hoping you've had fun, I've had fun with you throughout, and I'm hoping you take this back, you study some more papers, or you rather answer some questions and move with that. With that, I hand you back to Ty.
And thank you, Mr. Aslam. That was an awesome show. I had fun. I learned so much. And then we had the awesome call. So guys, don't forget, you can also call in. And on that note, don't forget, grade 12s, you have a live session that's happening this Saturday at 12 o'clock. So make sure you tune in. But for me, this is the part where I sign out and I say see you next time.